Let's take a shot in the dark. A Hail Mary attempt, yeah? Let's predict the future of Persona. Because I think we have a few data points that very well may not mean anything, but they could be indicative of a pattern that Atlus is establishing for at least the near future in regards to Persona's release cycle. And it all starts with Persona 5 Tactica. Yeah, remember that? It came out on November 17th, 2023. And less than 4 months later, Persona 3 Reload came out on February 2nd, 2024. And then later on, in about 7 months from the release of Reload, Episode Aigis, the third wave of the expansion pass, is set to come out, which should be the capstone for Persona 3 Reload, at least for now. I mean, come on, this is Atlus now we're talking about. 3 data points, and I may be absolutely missing here, right? It's entirely possible, but I think I may be onto something. I think Atlus wants to have something out for Persona roughly every half year, give or take a few months. We are all anticipating the inevitable announcement of Persona 6, which seems farther and farther away with each passing day as we just don't hear anything. And it's been so long since the release of base Persona 5 at this point, but all rumor is starting to point in the direction of Persona 6 being the next few years or so, and maybe a little bit sooner. So to me, it kind of makes sense as a company that if you have the capability to keep your name out in the public spotlight, so that at least for a good chunk of the year, people are at least thinking about you as an IP. We can even go a step further back with this, with the multi-platform ports for Persona 3 Portable, Persona 5 Royal, and Persona 4 Golden. They are clearly establishing a cadence to their release schedule for Persona specifically. It's not a hard and fast one, mind you, but there definitely seems to be a pattern emerging. So what can we glean from this? Well, the rumor mill has it, and just looking back at Persona as a franchise, chances are there's maybe 2 things for Persona 5 that they could do. A worldwide release of the gacha game, Persona 5 X I think is the name. However, there's also been rumor about a potential Persona 5 Arena game. Now, for those who may not know, Persona 4 had a sequel game, a follow-up if you will, called Persona 4 Arena, that took place in the summer, taking place after the game, where the gang met back up and, even with the members of P3 at that point, engaged in some zany antics and overcoming some new threat in the form of a fighting game. And they even made ports for Persona 4 Arena Ultimax not too long ago as well. And we know that Persona is no stranger to its spin-offs, or at least doubling down on its spin-offs. There have been multiple Q games and multiple dancing games. Granted, we only have 1 Strikers, and we only really have Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, but there's a possibility here, especially with how strong of an IP Persona 5 specifically is, that they could try and do this again with Persona 5 Arena. And in fact, the ending of Strikers, where they agreed to meet back up in the winter time, may be alluding to a game such as this, potentially. They could have also just tried and break the 4th wall and talk about how Tactica technically takes place in the winter, even though the timeline doesn't really match up there, but I digress. So let's take a minute to assume that Persona 6 comes out, say, first half of 2026. That means maybe 2 things for 2025. Well, Persona 5 Arena and then the worldwide release of the gacha game would kind of fit the bill there. And let's assume maybe only one of those things comes to pass, and they want to release Persona 6 in the back end of 2025. Well then, you can just easily slap in the global release of the gacha game in the first half, and Bob's your uncle. And let's be fair here, there's any number of things that they could do to potentially fill these gaps. I am of the opinion that we'll eventually get another version of Persona 3 Reload, simply to bundle in the expansion pass and the base game together into one purchase overall instead of having them be separate. And if we really want to be like nitpicky, or if I really want to be, I'm right, I could technically classify that as one of these releases. But let's be fair here, this is just a wild Hail Mary theory. It's nothing too serious here. It's just a trend that I'm seeing from Persona over the last couple of years that I think is going to hold true until at least the release of Persona 6. You do have to kind of be careful when it comes to pattern recognition in the video games medium and industry, because things can change on the dot or on a dime and change really quickly, completely dismantling everything that we've already established. It's entirely possible. I just kind of think that Atlus is positioning themselves in such a way to make sure that Persona as an IP is always talked about in one way or another, or that there's at least something palpable to look forward to in the in the near future for Persona. Is this necessarily what I would personally want? Not necessarily. I would be super down for Strikers 2. Maybe not even with the P5 cast. Just another Persona game in the style of Strikers. A game that I really enjoyed. Do I think we'll get that? Probably not. And I can't say that I'm particularly happy with Atlus right now in terms of the pricing and release style of Episode Aigis, which I talked about in a previous video, link in the description down below. But I do love Persona, and like a lot of you out there, I really want Persona 6. I want a new story. I want to see where this franchise can go from here and how it can take the lessons from the past and move into the future, which is one of the key strengths of Persona as an IP in my opinion, where it seems like for every mainline entry, they just kind of learn from what they did before to try and make it better. They don't always hit the mark, but they at least you can at least feel that they're trying in that way, in my opinion. Going from the original P3 to Fez, then to 4, then to Portable, then to Golden, whatever order that was, then to 5, then to Royal, now to P3 Reload, and you look at the changes the franchise has undergone in between each of those releases, you can see them trying to streamline certain elements or make certain elements more enjoyable and engrossing and just, I don't know if deep is the right word, just a little bit more involved, if that makes sense. Like Persona 5 Royal added a whole bunch of accoutrement to the combat loop and the gameplay systems that kind of made the game a little bit too RNG for some, or just a little bit too easy. So when it comes to Reload, it's still relatively an easy game, don't get me wrong, but they made things a little bit more deterministic and removed some of those layers of RNG, or a few of those really overpowered powers, like being able to make one more attacks stupidly broken. Like having one more attacks also regen SP and HP, while also doing way more damage. Showtimes became the Theurgy gauge, which became a deterministic gauge that you could actually see throughout the course of a fight increase based on the actions you did. It's no longer some background thing, or something that could, at least at times, feel randomized. And I really want to see the direction they're going to go for Persona 6, because it could be really cool and fun and interesting. And I can't say that I'm personally excited for another gacha game. Who knows, maybe it could be cool for a little bit, but the potential titles that I'm most excited for would be a Persona 5 Arena, assuming that it would be a giant crossover event in the style of Persona 4 Arena between the cast of P3, 4, and 5. That would be sick. I would love a Strikers 2, even if it's in a similar style to, say, a big crossover event like Arena was. Or just with whatever cast. I just want more Strikers gameplay, honestly. And it'll be interesting to see, right? Because I think it's fun to just theorycraft about where the series can go from here. Because after Episode Aigis, it's a giant question mark, really. I mean, we all assume Persona 6 is in the next couple of years. And Persona as an IP is a reliable leaker, let's say that. But I feel that most eyes are on Persona 6. Because there's so much potential and possibilities that could go into the construction of Persona 6. Like, do they want it to be that actual follow-up to the story of P3 and follow that Messiah theory, where it's like Makoto is supposed to be the Messiah analog? I mean, hell, he gets a Persona cult Messiah after all, and do the whole 3 days after, 3 games after thing, and follow up the story thread that was continued in Persona 4 Arena. They could do that. They could also just do a completely new cast with a completely new story and just have us fight another god and have it be pretty much completely disconnected outside of maybe a poster reference or two. And when you have this air of mystery, it breeds curiosity and people desiring to find out more and just wanting to see the direction that it goes. I do really hope that the pricing model and just business style of the expansion pass for Persona 3 Reload does not become commonplace, especially for Persona 6. But that'll be a bridge we cross when we get there. So yeah, let me know about how you feel about my little Persona release schedule theory. I don't think it's a hard and fast, like, 6-month rule, because duh, Persona 5 Tactica to Persona 3 Reload was only like 4 months, less than I think. But somewhere in the ballpark of once every half a year or so, have something come out for Persona. Whether it's a spin-off game, a mainline entry, DLC, whatever. And if we assume Persona 6 comes out in 2026, theoretically there's enough rumored projects to kind of fill in the gaps there. So we'll wait and see what comes of it. So thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.